And so I just want to introduce you now, after that little introduction from myself, to Angela and Avina. So we've already had a little bit of talk between each other. And as I mentioned to a couple of you, Angela and Avina are the clinical learning facilitators at Mount Vernon Hospital, which is just outside of London. And we've been working together closely over the last year to come up with these sessions which have been introduced with VERT 3.1. So I'm going to actually pass you over now to Angela and Avina, and they're going to take it from here. So Avina, I've assigned control to you there.
Oh, okay, thank you, Tom. Hi, everyone. This is Avina, and hi, this is Angela. And welcome. We're excited to do this today. It's a little bit strange for us to train like this, but we shall do our best. So what we would like to do today, just bear with me a minute and I move things around here. Yeah. So what we're going to cover, I don't know if you can see that on your screen, but see the PowerPoint presentation, but what we'd like to cover today is a little bit of the background of how we came about doing these sessions, what some of the barriers were to creating it, and what we did to overcome some of the problems. And then Angela will go over the prostate CPD session, and if we have time, we'll show you the cervix one. It's very similar with a few differences. And then show you the workbook that we've created with that, and the evaluation form that we've used, in case you would like to use something like that as well. So initially, in terms of the project, we had many conversations with Virtual in terms of trying to create something that everybody could use. We've been doing CPD sessions using VERT for quite a long time. But we had never really done anything like this. So what we decided to do is, from the needs of our department, so one of the needs is how we implemented CBCT for prostate patients, and in line with a new competency framework. So we felt VERT would be really useful in helping us create that. So that's how we came up with the workbook for the prostate. And then also decided to do another site, just because cervix was a site that maybe not as common, but still, quite complex. And so we thought we'd come up with that as a continuing professional development, with a view, as you may know, a lot of gynae stuff is heading towards adaptive. So we thought we'd start with the cervix tutorial, and then and at some point trying to develop that further. And also in terms of the theoretical knowledge that we felt lacking, or at least forgotten. So it's a little bit of a revision session, as well as a revision of anatomy, and also in terms of new techniques and how we think about things and problem solving, etc. So that was why we developed these workbooks, and we're hoping to develop some more going further. So just talking a little bit about what the barriers were, and I know I'm just giving you a very brief overview, because each department, I'm sure, has their own issues, but certainly where we were concerned, time was the biggest issue we had in terms of developing the session, delivering the session as well. Between the two of us, we work part-time and are the only clinical learning facilitators here, and our role is both with students and staff, so the time element was a big factor in this. And of course, we had to rely on many other professionals within the department, physicists, IT, and staff as well, because as both of us don't always work on the floor in terms of the new developments and knowledge. So it's great for us in developing this, but of course you rely on others, so that adds to the time element as well. And we have an issue with our room here, the VERT room, in that it's used by so many people. So of course there was the issue of the availability of that room in terms of developing this. formatting the session, once we had laid out our initial thoughts and what we felt the outcome was needed, was also quite time consuming. But we had help from virtual as well, which was great, and I don't think we could have done it without them. But it did take a lot of time to create the works, and we created a few things with the workbooks. We'll show you later on, but it was one workbook just with questions or the whole layout with no answers in it. One was with answers for the facilitator to use, and one was just as a brief overview of how you actually get into the session and run it. But we were fortunate in that we did have a lot of help from all the staff that I've mentioned before. And the other issue, of course, was the consent. Although we were fortunate here that our consent forms do allow for information to be used, of course, as long as it's anonymized. So we were very, very lucky with that. So I think that's kind of what the overview of what our issues are. I don't know before if there is anything before I hand over to Tom that any of you want to just quickly ask before we run through the actual session.
I think at this point everyone still has their volume on, so if there's any questions that you did want to ask Angela and Avina, then feel free to see. I know, judging from the feedback I had from some of the emails, that some people have looked at the sessions but not necessarily engaged with them so much as yet.
Okay.
But yeah, if anyone has any questions that they want to ask about how the sessions were put together or the background, then obviously now is the time to say that. And if not, we can just have a full question and answer at the end if people want to do that as well.
Okay, in that case, we'll hand back to Tom, who's going to run through a few things there before he hands back to us. Thanks, Tom.
Well, thank you. So I'm just going to take back control there, and I'm going to just flick back through into Vert. So there's one thing that we wanted to run through before actually going through the sessions in total, and that was how to load up the sessions. Now, most of you will have received these already as part of your 3.1 download. And in the front of the CD or in your download link, you'll also have a CD that is labeled sessions, like treatment sessions. So we have here, the first part is the prostate and cervix, and I'm going to show you a little bit of what this looks like. So first of all, to go over, you have the intro document. And this is going to explain everything that I'm going to talk to you about today. So the way that the sessions are put together is to use the virtual presenter. So once you've took these sessions from your CD or from the download link, if you then store it somewhere on the computer, which is in a safe location, you'll then have your cervix lesson and your prostate lesson. Now, I've already loaded up the prostate, so I'm going to show you how to do this with the cervix. So in the actual folder, you'll have 4 subfolders, the first one being the patient. If you actually then bring in the patient to that, and load it into Vert. And then this is where you can use your virtual presenter. So you then go to View, Virtual Presenter, and Open, and then you go back to where you had your subfolders before, and you want to keep these in the same place in a safe location on your PC. So the next folder down is your slideshow, which you can load automatically in, and then the next step to that is to insert picture, go back to the same folder, and then the third folder down is your virtual presenter pictures, which you can then open and bring in. And this is all explained in the introductory document to the training materials. You'll see here now on the left-hand side that there's some numbers that relate to the position of the slides. So you can then actually just drag and drop and move these into the right position. And then once you're happy with that, then you can actually save this. So this is why it's important to have the patient in the same place each time. As is the nature of the virtual presenter, if you'll move that, then you'll have to reorder these. But once you have that patient stored, you can then save this. And once it's saved, the next time you bring in that patient, all you would have to do is go to your virtual presenter and open, and then your virtual presenter will be there with the links to the images and everything in the right position, ready to go. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background into how to load the sessions up, how to work those. And from there, you'll be able to work with the patient. Okay. So now you've got the sessions loaded up, I think it's only right that we go back to Angela and Avina and they can actually talk through the sessions and how they're supposed to be run through. So I'm going to actually move back across to the prostate session and then pass back over to Angela and Avina, who will actually talk through the sessions and what they're actually about.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Hi again, everyone. It's Angela here. So as Tom mentioned, we're just going to go through the virtual presenter here and how we went about doing things. So enclosed within this session, what we've tried to do is to give an anatomy refresher. We felt that there were some areas where people might need refreshing. We also wanted to look at some plans so that people could start to have a think about doses using DVHs, organs at risk, and actually being able to select a suitable plan for the patient to be treated on. We also have got some images enclosed within this presentation so people can decide whether they feel that they would go ahead and treat that patient or if there's further decision making that needs to be done before the patient's treated. And then at the end of the session, there's also some CPD questions or continual professional development questions. The idea behind that is so that people can take those away and complete them in their own time. Also, you can run it as we've done, where we've just selected some of these questions and asked the participants to answer the questions there and then within the session. The people that we've trained using this session so far have done about 20 of the radiographers, 5 members of the physics team, and also 5 doctors as well have been trained using the system. Okay, so these are the slides that we just used for having a refresher on the anatomy. And I was going to show you the workbook quickly down at the bottom, but the people to have a look at during and to fill out during it as well. So we've got a blank workbook, which we're just pulling up here. I'm just trying to scroll down here so you can see that.
Sorry, do you want me to move that box there so it's out your way?
I was just trying to scroll down so that I could show the next page. Thank you. So on here we've got the colours of the organs are outlined, and then the respondents can just put down the structure in the next page. We also do that as just talking out, so staff will just actually name the organ as we go through. And then we go on to the other part of the session as we go through, but you can see we've got a section for plans, which we go on to next, where people can actually write what are the good elements of each plan, and also what are the bits that are not so good. So we'll go back into there again, so we can go back to the anatomy. There we go. So we have a few of the anatomy slides, and with that workbook, there's also a workbook for whoever's presenting the session with all of the answers in. So it's just a guide really, and the idea behind it is that can be adapted to meet your own department needs. So if something is slightly different with your technique, then feel free just to add whatever you want to it or amend things. So on here we've had then 3 different distributions. So we've got a conventional, an IMRT distribution, and an ARC or VMAP plan. And then we have all 3 of the plans all next to each other. So to get those up, what we did is we screen grabbed each of these sections from VERT and then used Paint just to add these into Virtual Presenter, which for us, we hadn't actually done that before, so for us that was a little bit of a challenge, but once we got the hang of it, it was all very easy. So once this is up, we've been asking participants to again, look at which parts of the plan are good and which parts are not so good. And we've been particularly looking at dose distributions, where the low dose staff is, how that's affected between all the different plans, and looking at doses to the organs at risk as well. So linked with those, we've then got the DVHs. So our green one here is the ARC plan, and this is for rectum. And on here, this is the rectum plan on the IMRT plan, and this one is on the conventional plan. So we've just been picking a few dose points along here and talking about how much dose, which percentage of the volume is receiving. And then we've also got bladder here with the same again. So the bottom line here is the ARC plan. This one is the IMRT, and this one up here is the conventional. So we've been using this in comparison with the distributions above, just to check that people are happy with doses to specific organs, and asking people to select which plan then that they would like to treat on. Again, all of that is detailed within the workbook. Okay. Then what we did is we wanted to have some treatment scenarios. So we just picked a few scenarios where we thought it would be useful for people to discuss what they felt might have happened with this patient. For us, it's been quite interesting because, particularly on this slide and the next one, we've got a slight shift here in the CPIMPS direction. It's not very clear on there. And then on the next slide, there's one a bit clearer, sorry, in the post direction where the shift is off. And we've been asking staff what might have caused these changes. Quite often people have been relating that to internal anatomy structures. So they've been saying, oh, can't really see on there, but maybe there's more gas in the rectum or more bladder filling. But then what we've been encouraging people to do as well is going back to basics and checking that the actual setup procedure of the patient is correct. So those have been quite interesting. And then what we've done here is we've got some plans we've got some of the planning scan here, and we've captured these on a PowerPoint and again inserted it as a JPEG so that we can look at these again on VERT. So we've been looking with these patients as to whether, in conjunction with the organs at risk, which are on the following page, whether that patient would be treated. So on here we can see the dose that's been achieved to the rectum and what the constraint is. So obviously within this patient it was good. So then we were going back to the examples here and asking people if they felt they would treat that patient, if they felt the PTV was covering. And we've got a couple of other examples of that again, which is detailed in the workbook that we can go along through. Again, all these images were just saved as JPEGs and then brought into Virtual Presenter. And the same with these also. And then finally, we've just got a patient also that's gone into bladder retention here. So we've just been looking at the volume of the bladder and finding out, is there any other investigations that might be needed for this patient, along with actually would we treat this patient or not on this day. So again, it was a lot of screen grabbing sort of images, a lot of inserting images as JPEGs. And so far, people that have attended the session have found it very useful. And I think that they've found that the workbooks have been quite useful also. Did anyone have any questions in regards to the actual session construction itself, or how we put anything together?
I just want to point out at this point that everyone, the volume is muted, so if you could type into the chat box, that'd be great.
Okay. While people are doing that, I'll just go back into the Word document again here. Yeah. Maybe let's do so this is the overview document here, which is the one that has the answers within it. And it also tells you how to open up the session as well, and goes through how to bring all the starting points up so you can actually bring the presentation up in the first place. And then underneath all the plans, you can see the discussions that we've been having about what people felt was good about the plan and what people thought might not have been quite so good in compared to the conventional one.
And so I just had a question from Yella there. He's actually asked, are the students aware of the constraints at the beginning of the workbook session?
It depends on what year group actually the students are. We've done it with the students that are in their second and third year. They have been more aware of it. The students in the first year have no idea, so we've been teaching them to it. They're going through basic in terms of so yeah, begin with basic ideas.
I have to say, just to add to that, that the students that we have done that with, even if they didn't have the knowledge, have found it very, very useful to link everything up with the anatomy, the plan, and the treatment scenarios. While they see that every day, they're not always link everything up. It's really useful that exercise with the students, and you get a very different feedback from the students. It has been very positive.
Yeah, I'm just. Can you hear me okay there, Angela? We're just having a little bit of feedback on the audio there. I think there's an echo that's come on the line from somewhere.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
We'll just try going over that again, and I'll stop if it does repeat itself.
The line's actually a bit better this end now, so hopefully it is your end as well.
Yeah, that's much better. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. We were just saying that the second and third year students did have an idea about the dose constraints, but some of them needed refreshing, as with a lot of the students. Sometimes, as they're not using it daily, that it does tend to be slightly forgotten. But they did have an idea. The first year students that we've done it with didn't have very much experience of dose constraints, but it was something that we went into a bit more with them throughout the session. And Avina was just pointing out that the first years, even though they didn't have that much knowledge of the dose constraints, they actually found it quite useful just to link theory to practice, just actually being able to see it and looking at the scenarios. They found quite useful to then be able to take back into practice and realise why staff were taking certain images and why they were shifting and making the decisions that they were.
That's great. I'm just going to take control there a second, and just going to bring Yella back on just so he can speak. Yella, can you speak there?
Yeah. Thank you for the overview. I think it's very very helpful for the students that they that every aspect of the procedure is linked. So as well the anatomy, the plan evaluation, and errors made during the setup, and so on. So I think an excellent job.
Well, thank you.
Would it be nice to add something on the training. I think you use Eclipse in your hospital.
Yeah,
seeing your screenshots.
Yes.
Would it be helpful to add as well in Eclipse the criteria so they can and you prepare for the same patient case in Eclipse with the 3 different plans, and you ask them to evaluate the 3 plans live on the Eclipse workstation?
Yes. Yeah, that is another thought. I mean, the 3 plans that you saw, they were all from the same patients. Yes. But yes, that is another avenue that we haven't explored, which we could. Yeah.
So I think in step 1, it could be very helpful to do it in the virtual presenter, but then I think it's very good for the students that they do the plan evaluation themselves in Eclipse.
Yes. Yeah, that would be useful for them to do that.
That could be our next phase.
Yes.
And just on that point, actually, there is some work being done by us in the office here to come up with some plans that would be reworkable. So one of these would be a prostate plan, and that could obviously be introduced as part of a session into that. So as well as going through this, you'd be able to bring a plan with the structure sets and the CTs in, and then, as you suggested, Yella, you would then be able to create a range of different treatment scenarios and plans using that patient. So I think that's a really good idea that you've come up with there, and it would really add another layer to the session.
Yes, I think that would be, because we now have plans to combine our third system, where we have a marvelous room for that, but we have a small room next to it, and there will be 3 workstations, and there you can do the plan evaluation, and then you can go back to the first room to see, okay, how it's looking really in the patient. So we are mixing as well the treatment planning system with the third.
That's great. If you have the resources and all the time and all of that, the manpower to do that, it would be absolutely fantastic to be able to link that include that in the pathway.
But I think there's one option in between that you fill in Eclipse. You have your criteria template for a plan, and you make screenshots of the plan evaluation, and you show them the difference. What criteria are met and what criteria are not met for all the 3 plans.
Yeah, no, that would be a good thing to add. Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you, Yella. I'll pass back to Andrew and Avina so they can continue talking about the workbooks.
Thank you, Tom. So that's pretty much the end of the workbook. We've just got the CPD questions down at the bottom. So I'll just try and scroll down to those there now.
Sorry, I'll move that out of your way. 1 second.
Okay.
There you go.
There we are. So these are some of the questions that we've had for staff, again, which they can just take away and do within their own time frame. What we've been tending to do, because we've been doing it with the qualified staff a lot and with the doctors, we've been picking some more holistic care questions, and we've been finding that that's been useful for people to get more of a general overview and a more rounded approach to the presentation. I'm just trying to drag that down so that you can see some of the other questions. Here we go. So we've been looking quite a bit at some of the PSA results and the Gleason scoring. And then as we carry on down, there's a few questions about the patient side effects and management of those, and also what support services and things are available within the hospital, and also on websites to be able to help back that up. And there's also some references as well at the end for literature for people to look at. Sorry, it's just above the CPD question. So there's those for people to sort of go away and think about as well if they want to. And then finally, we had the evaluation, which we used at the end of the session. So if anybody, again, wanted to adapt it to their own use, then that would be absolutely fine. But we tried to keep it quite precise, just so that it wasn't taking up too much time with the session. And we were actually asking people to fill it in before they left to ensure that we got it back.
Yeah, and just to say as well, we did do some confidence questionnaires as well, mostly with the post-registration staff, just to see where they were before and after the session, just for our sake to see whether it actually helped, or with the VERT, particularly VERT, helped with it. Because there are so many tools out there that are for training, and we also wanted to present it or send in something for Estro, so that was our other reason for gaining that information, to get some stats out of it.
And I think that's everything from our point of view. Again, if anyone had any questions, we'd be happy to answer it. We have got the cervix workbook here that we can just show you the difference between.
So quite a bit of it is very similar. There are differences in that there's a little bit more in terms of anatomy as a revision, nodal anatomy, structural anatomy, and also to do TNM staging. And the idea behind that was to link it from the beginning for staff and students to be aware of what's around the organ and all the spread related to it and the treatment scenarios that then happen. The idea with some of the treatment scenarios was to get staff to, particularly staff and third-year students sorry, I'm struggling. The page seems to be just going off. Just to evaluate it more critically, so that they are talking about what they're doing right now in relation to what articles they've read or what the protocols are. And so some of the questions are the answers need to be quite in-depth, so that they are able to critically analyze. And particularly with cervix and any other gynae, with the new techniques coming into play, adaptive, etc., and they're being more complex, we felt it important that people understand what the convention was and what the new techniques are, and the differences, and how, and the reasons why we go from one to the other. So that was why those are some of the key differences between the two workbooks. But otherwise, a lot of things are very similar. DVDH's anatomy, all that is quite similar. I won't go through the virtual presenter on that. It's just to give you a bit of an idea of the differences between the two. Are there any other questions for it, or in terms of whether it's in terms of how we put things together, or any other ideas you might have?
Just going to leave that open for a second and let people type into the chat box. I'm just going to take back control there and head back to the previous slide we had, because I think that's a really good one, because it has your contact information on there. And I really want people to take that down and write that down, and if there are any questions, I know you previously said to me that you're more than happy to answer any questions about that. And also, if you can copy in virtual into that email also, if there's any kind of technical questions to do with the sessions, then we'll be more than happy to answer. So I'm just going to give it a few minutes and see if anyone has any questions, either via the chat box, or you have the option to unmute yourself on the top toolbar, and then you can speak that way. Just one from Yella says just a thank you from Yella there. No questions from Layla. I think really that's been an excellent overview of how the sessions were produced, the barriers that you faced, and I think that's really quite important to focus on that. How you put the project together. Was there any questions about how to put the session into the virtual presenter? And I think once you've got to that stage where everything's all set up, ready to go, then you can work through the workbooks and work through the virtual presenter and use that session as you will.
I guess the thing to say is as well, once you start using, if you start using it, and then if you come across any questions, please feel free to email us or contact us, and we can go through it. It's always easier once you run the session or used the version.
Absolutely, and that's one thing I do want to stress. There's been a lot of work that's been put in and time by Andrew and Avina. So we really want people to engage with these sessions and really move forward with them. And also we'd love some feedback as well. We do have a SurveyMonkey link that we'll be sending out over the next couple of months. So any feedback on where we can go with the sessions and any kind of sites that you'd like to see in the future, that would really be something that we'd like to see.
Yes, very nice. Thank you.
Okay. Yellow, I had your message. I'll definitely send you the workbook sessions. I just wanted to confirm that everybody does have these sessions, and if you don't, you're more than welcome to get in touch. These should have come as part of your VERT 3.1 download link. Great. So no questions. Everyone's saying thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.